third speaker today is Artem Lalaiants from GEOGUARD in Vancouver, British Columbia. He will be presenting on stopping geolocation fraud via rented residential IPs at the CDN level to protect territorial content rights. Artem is Service Delivery Manager for GEOGUARD. He works as a key facilitator between customers and technical teams and is responsible for the company's strategy and success by overseeing the end-to-end delivery of all product releases and developments. He holds both a bachelor's and a master's degree in radio physics and complex information technologies from Kharkiv National University. Please welcome Artem to the podium.
Thank you, John. Hi, everyone. So today I'm going to be talking about the particular use case that we came across in GeoGuard. And this use case is around location fraud using other people's residential IPs and the solutions that we have to offer in GeoGuard. So just a few words about myself and the company. So my name is Artem, and I work as a Service Delivery Manager for GeoGuard. GeoGuard comes from a highly regulated US online gaming market where a failure of geolocation can create a penalty of 5 years in jail for our customers. So obviously it's really important for us to have a geolocation system that actually works. We currently operate in 42 states, and our solutions are deployed across more than 300 million devices. So based on that expertise that we had, we now created products for protecting digital media rights for post-production. So I would like to start with this statement that someone may be selling your part of your home bandwidth. Someone else could be using your home IP address, which is linked to your physical location for some purposes. So I want to talk about why would someone want to use your IP and why it's a major issue, why it's important. So that slide, on the left-hand side, we can see that that clearly OTT is growing rapidly. We're now in a year when digital becomes digital revenues gets the most portion for the industry, and some of the content, in particular, it's sport content, is highly localized. So rights holders expect to get most of the revenues, up to 70% of their revenues from domestic markets. And lastly, advertising is no longer a primary source of revenues. So as we can see here on the third graph, rights holders get most of their revenues from subscriptions already, and it's expected to continue to grow. So that is a traditional business model that rights holders apply these days. Rights holders sell content for different prices in different regions, and usually on the left-hand side we have a high-value market, which is usually a domestic market where rights holders get most of their revenues. And these markets are usually supported by high-value consumers. And at the same time, rights holders want to sell their content to other markets, and usually those are low-value markets. They sell content for less. So why this model is under threat? Primarily for two reasons. One reason is illegal streaming. In case of illegal streaming, rights holders don't get any revenues, obviously. But there are some solutions available for solving that issue, including watermarking. But I'm not going to be covering this today, and I want to focus on another threat, which is the case when high-value consumer accessing low-value markets through VPNs and proxies. So that's just a real use case, an example from one of our customers, BBC, who are a major creator of content in the UK, but at the same time they're major broadcasters. And the issue that they were having is that people were accessing their content from abroad, so they ended up selling content rights to foreign broadcasters, but those broadcasters were not willing to pay simply because their users already watch the content via VPNs by connecting to iPlayer and watching it for free. So that slide just proves that VPN these days is more about accessing geo-restricted content rather than for privacy or security. As you can see, those are two screenshots from major VPN providers, and for the one that is called CyberGhost, you can see that they have just a list of links that user can click, and they will get you all the way through to the content straight away. So VPNs are used primarily for unblocking geo-restricted content these days. That slide just shows how huge the issue is. So according to Global Web Index research, most VPN users admit that their primary goal to use VPN service is to access geo-restricted content. VPNs is a huge business. Some of the biggest VPN service providers have more than 100 million customers, and that popularity is driven by OTT content popularity, basically. And lastly, some VPN providers publicly claim that they were able to see signups increase by 100% during major sporting events, such as Olympic Games. So how do OTT platforms protect themselves? That's a traditional model that you can see here in this diagram. Basically, a user connects to a VPN servers, then they get an IP in that location where they want to appear in and where the content should be available. And the OTT platform would usually have a VPN check based on database of VPN and anonymizers IPs, and if there is a match against that database, the access to content is denied. But obviously, VPN service providers continue to evolve, and new methods to bypass that protection keep coming up, and so that's the environment we're in now. Some premium premium VPN service providers basically route traffic for their users through residential IPs that they get from legitimate users, so that they can bypass VPN check on OTT platforms, obviously, because that IP is a legitimate residential IP, so that they get the content from OTT resource. I can say that effective blocking here would obviously require blacklisting every single compromised residential IP, which is not an option because it will create a lot of false positives. And the way that VPN providers get those residential IPs is through companies that own huge proxy networks. Some of the biggest companies like that, they own their own peer-to-peer proxy network. They claim to have more than 35 million IP addresses in their database. From technically, they provide very advanced service supporting APIs in multiple languages. They have various subscription plans and can provide you with shared and dedicated IPs, as well as unlimited concurrent requests if there is a need for that. And the way those companies are harvesting those IPs is basically through botnets. And those botnets are created with various ad-free and free of charge and ad-free applications. So one of the example of such free application would be the VPN service called Ola. And so basically, once a user installs that free VPN service, they sign up their computer to be a part of that botnet, sharing part of their home internet connection bandwidth with others. So our research uncovered that that's the way premium VPN providers deliver content to their customers. Basically what they do, they route traffic for their users through residential IPs for specific OTT platforms. They are targeting them based on domain names, and usually an OTT platform would serve video content through CDNs, and CDN and the content is located on different domain names. So once a user gets in, he gets heavy video traffic routed through data center IPs. And the reason for this scheme is that simply the traffic through residential IPs is extremely expensive for VPN providers. So that's why they're doing this loop. Basically, they route heavy video traffic through cheap data center IPs. And the solution that we came up with is to have a VPN check with GeoGuard integrated on CDN level, so that when a user comes on residential legitimate IP, pretending to be a legitimate user, and then accessing heavy video streaming on CDN with the VPN IP, we're able to detect that and deny access for those users. So just to conclude, I would like to talk through some highlights. And obviously spoofing is a major threat to the industry, and it's putting rights holders' business model under threat, as I shown earlier. In this case, effective blocking is possible, but it will require multiple parties to cooperate together and to figure out effective technical solutions. Based on our experience in GeoGuard, VPN service providers keep evolving, creating new ways to bypass VPN proxy detections. So once again, stakeholders need to be aware of these risks associated with location spoofing, and effective solution is only possible when technology partners work tightly together. That's pretty much it for me. Thank you, everyone.
So we do have time for questions. Any questions for Artem?
Hi, I'm Jason Bodak for the Africa Channel. Thank you so much. Fantastic presentation.
Thank you.
I wanted to sort of clarify something real quick. Were you suggesting that the majority of all VPN users were essentially using it in some way to either pirate or geocache all video? Because especially with recent regulations and laws being put in, essentially allowing ISPs to sell our content, it's become a really almost necessity for a lot of people to get VPNs. And I see it sort of as a 50-50 kind of thing, and I'm interested in your thoughts on that.
Yeah, so basically you are asking if these days, if the main reason for users these days is to use VPN is to access geo-restricted content.
That's one of the things that I took away from your presentation, and doesn't certainly feel like that, especially today with where regulations and legal laws are pushing us as wanting to access open internet.
Okay. Yeah, so just to give you one example, as I came across the news that earlier I guess it's in 2015, Netflix had over 50 million customers in those markets where they didn't have rights for. So that tells us that those 50 million customers basically accessing the US market through VPNs. And imagine that those 50 million customers need to have valid VPN subscription, need to use VPNs, and that tells us how huge the market is. It's only for Netflix, but there are a huge number of other OTT platforms that people want to access, being in those regions where that content is not available. So yeah, and again, according to research made by Global Web Index, they state that most of VPN customers admit that their primary reason for using VPN service is to access geo-restricted content, basically.
It seems, especially with Netflix, that would be an obvious one, but it seems hard to ask somebody, what do you use a service that you use for privacy for? It's sort of a backwards question to ask, but anyways, thank you.
Thank you.
Actually, this brings a very important question to my mind is there are frequent users who travel. Like if you take my instance, I'm traveling almost 25 to 30% of my time outside the country.
Okay.
And what happens is you are a legitimate United States user. You're paying for Amazon Prime in US rates. You're paying for Netflix in US rates. And still when I travel, I go to China, I go to India, I cannot access my favorite programs or content anymore.
Right.
So is Netflix or is there a model you think that will evolve eventually? Because rights for a person should not be based on where they are today, but where they are paying for and purchasing those rights.
Right. Yeah, I get your question. Okay.
So is there, you feel, a legitimate model in the future that will allow for this kind of situation or use case?
Thank you for the question, first of all. Yes, I think you're right, and I agree with you, but again, it depends on certain regulations and rights holders' requirements. And I do think that that in future we should be moving to that model, so that if a person is a resident of the country where the content is available, they should have access to it from anywhere in the world. But again, from technical perspective, the products that we provide to that industry is purely focused on detecting VPNs, and it's up to OTT platform or rights holder to decide what they want to let their users watch the content or not. We're just providing them with that important piece of information for them to be compliant with certain requirements. Thank you. Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please tap the like button and also subscribe to our channel to receive notifications when we add new content. For more information about us, please visit SMPTE.org. We'll see you next time.